Can you hear and see the slides?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, welcome to the new class, 10th class of nanoscale modeling and simulation. In the last class, we are talking about protein modeling, the need of protein modeling, how the structural biology have solved the structure, but how it takes a long time, incorporation of manpowers, and that makes the things so difficult that whereas there are crores of protein sequence are there in the market, only 1,87,000 structures are still now solved. And if you think that 1,87,000 structure comes from individual 1,87,000 protein, that's even not the reality. There are many proteins which are therapeutically or important for other purposes, and those proteins are already structured from different organism with different complexes. So if we look at the reality, there are 30 to 40,000 structures available now. And this is a big gap, and there is definite continuous scientific, investigations going on to replace that bridge, to make up that bridge. And the best thing which could have easily covered the gap is computational prediction or in silico prediction of the 3D structures. In the last class, I have talked about some of the experimental historical experiments which have gives us immense confidence. We talked about Christian and Finson's experiment. We talked about Levinthal's paradox. We talked about Michael Rossmann's process of molecular replacement. We talked about Johnson Couples Rotamer library, and all those historical achievements have given immense confidence to us where we are standing today. And probably I will make it a big discussion that in 2021, the last year, there is a competition which is called CAST competition. What is CAST competition? Again, I'm going to talk about that in details, but in brief, to just make you excited, CAST competition is a worldwide Olympic type of competition, worldwide championship for in silico structure predictors to submit their structure and have a scoring on the entire performance and a ranking how they perform. Trust me, this is, as I told, is not less than an Olympic competition to us, to the structural and computational biologists, and many of them stop their labs regular works. They spend sleepless night to come into that. So that CAST competition started in 1994, and every 2 years the evaluations used to happen. And in the last evaluation, miracle happened. Why I call it miracle? Because the AI-based deep learning method containing process from DeepMind of the AlphaFold initiative have scored more than an experimental model could score. So it's the first time theoretical predictions are showing better confidence, better scoring than even experimental findings. That is definitely a revolution, and you are on the very conjuncture of that revolution. Today I will talk about the basic 3 modeling techniques, but then I will gradually also going to the description of AI-based, artificial intelligence-based determinations, where you will definitely see the history and the achievements of AlphaFold 2. Start with, if you remember, I talked about three modeling techniques. One is homology modeling or comparative prediction modeling. Another is fold prediction or fold recognition, and another is ab initio modeling. To start with, you should listen to a wise man who is standing here. Accurate modeling always does not depend only on greater sequence identity. It depends also on similarity between folds and functions of the template and target protein. So, when we do modeling or when we do anything in computation, we go by number. So here also a straightforward approach is, if you have a sequence with a structure and if you have another sequence which is having very high identity with this, then we could use that as a template and develop the model. But according to this wise man standing here, the accuracy of a modeling does not only depend on the higher sequence identity, it also depends on if the two proteins are performing similar function, if they are having similar folds. Though I should also admit a fact here that if you have higher sequence identity, generally you go towards a same fold. What is fold? The three-dimensional structure when the individual amino acids interact with each other and develop a three-dimensional structure, that is called fold. So you already know that there are billions of protein sequences, and automatically it could be thought that there are billions of protein folding. No. In spite of having a lot of, by lot I mean billions of protein sequence, there are only few. When I say few, it is estimated that there are 10,000 to 20,000 folds in the nature. Why? Let me give you an explanation about that. If you think, like just think yourself in the place of nature. What is your duty? Your duty is to continuously develop new organism, continuously like functioning of them, and to do that you have generated millions and billions of proteins. But if you have to fold those protein individually, that enhance the amount of work into another level. To make the task little easier, what nature had done, it have a lot of sequence, but they does not diversify into different fold. So a group of sequence goes through similar fold, and that's why in spite of having a lot of fold, like sequences, there are limited number of folds. And that is also one thing, that if there is number of fold, like limited number of fold, there is a correlation between the sequence and the fold, and that's where the theoretical process are looking for. I would talk in details about that. But now come to homology modeling. In homology modeling, as I have told earlier, you have a sequence and the sequence does not have a structure, so you want to model that sequence's structure. First, you go for a homologous sequence which is having a structure. So you have a sequence whose structure is unknown. You are going to search for a similar sequence who have its structure. Use that structure as a template and model the structure of the unknown protein. So Start from, you are having a sequence and you need to know or need to predict the three-dimensional structure of that sequence containing protein. So you search for a homologous sequence which have a structure, use the structure as template and have a or predict a three-dimensional model of the protein you wanted to have structure. Very simple, very straightforward, very effective, very popular. There are four general steps in comparative modeling. It's called recognition, alignment, modeling, and model analysis. But in my eye, as a structural biologist, biochemist, biophysicist, I think that there are five steps: recognition, alignment, modeling, model validation, and model analysis towards finding its function. So model analysis part I split into two parts. One is validation of the model and second is try to understand the function by having the 3D structure. Recognition is the identification of any well-characterized protein similar to target protein by BLAST search. So as I told, you have an unknown sequence and you have a sequence whose structure is not known. You use this as a probe to get a similar sequence which have structure. So to connect with that sequence which have a structure, the process is called recognition. And generally we do that by BLAST, which is basic local alignment search tool, or BLAST, basic local alignment search tool. PSI-BLAST, which is protein based BLAST, is what exactly we are doing, and we will have a demonstration of the comparative modeling in our class. After recognition, it is alignment. What is alignment? You have your sequence whose structure is unknown. You recognize a sequence. Now you have to compare them, and the comparison is done by alignment, which is position by position, target, template equivalence, sequence alignment. So you align the sequence, and this is not word to word alignment. There are processes by which you do proper alignment, introducing gaps where you think there is gap needed, and in that way alignment used to be done. We will again look at those alignment thing. After alignment, we go for modeling, which is detailed 3D structure of protein development using inbuilt algorithm. So as I told, the folding is not based on biological data or biological phenomena. It is based on physics and chemistry, which means it is based on size, charge, and interaction. So those are calculated, and those who are thermodynamically driven, given the opportunity, that principle is built in algorithm to different programs. And the whole process of converting a sequence to 3D structure is called modeling. Then come model analysis. As I told, the first step is model validation. The model protein can be verified by ProCheck, PDB-Sum. What is the quality of the model? So in the modeling, as we know that you are doing prediction, so that prediction is done by verification. What type of verification? We'll talk. Another thing, as I told, when you get the 3D structure, now you will go for what you actually wanted. You go for analyzing and understanding the structure to get the function. What are the program for recognition of template? BLAST, PSI-BLAST, PFAM, FFAS, Meta Server, search for most suitable templates. So I talk about BLAST and SciBLAST. I will show that. Others you will check. Identify the PDB code of the template. If you remember, there are two codes. One is PDB code, another is UniProt code. PDB ID and UniProt ID. What is the PDB ID? PDB ID, so UniProt ID is unique for a protein, which means if you know one UniProt ID, that will talk about one unique protein in the universe. But for 3D structure, for one protein could have multiple 3D structure and multiple PDB ID. PDB ID is unique for a unique 3D structure. PDB ID contain 4 letter and number. The starting one is a number, and depending on what number it is, you could understand that this is a recent structure or it is a older structure. Older structure have 1, 2, 3, and higher the number, it comes more recently solved structure. So PDB ID is a ID which is unique for a particular protein structure. And one protein could have multiple PDB ID. PDB ID is composed of 4 letter and number, where the first one is number, and the number is an indicator of how recent or old the structure is. Also, you could understand the statistical significance of the match. You have the sequence of the unknown structure. You recognize the known structure. How to recognize that is by matching. And Z-score and E-values are parameter of understanding or matching the sequence which mostly match your sequence. Value, the number of hits one can expect to see just by chance when searching a database of a particular size. What that means? You all are staying home, right? And you are from different places, different geographical locations. So now it would be rare if one of you goes to market and meet another. That would be a rare phenomenon. If that happen, it could be said that you guys stay close to each other. But the same phenomena, if happened when you all are like being in IIT Roorkee, then that would be not a rare phenomena, that would be a regular phenomena. So when you are searching in an unbiased way, finding a sequence as similar to yours would be done by their by chance matching, and E value close to 0 means there is good match. Z-score, this score expressed as a distance from the mean calculated in standard deviation. So you have the entire distribution, and the standard one is in the it is in the mean. So how far from the mean, and bigger means it's rare. So E value closer to 0 is better. Z-score bigger the better. So this is the Z-score. You see the 0 is the mean, and here it is Zx is 0.3413, and this is because of the Z-score and how you understand. I have already talked about BLAST search. If you see here, there is a glimpse of the BLAST search. In the BLAST search, Now you could see here maximum score, total score, query coverage, e-value, identity, and accession. So, maximum score is the number, higher the number, score is maximum. And query coverage is the most important thing here, because sometimes even identity is not a proper reflection, whereas query coverage is. What I mean, if you have an identity of 99%, you always feel that the structures are very, very similar, like the sequences are very, very similar. But it is actually depends on the query coverage. Let's say the query coverage is 100 as it is written here, and identity is 99%. That means the real identity is 99%. Whereas if the query coverage is 20% and identity is still 99%, the real identity is 19.8%. So that clearly tells you like how important query coverage is. Now, what is actually the query coverage? If this is the total query and one sequence is covering just this, that means it's covering 20%. So higher the query value from 0 to 100, it is better. But if it is 50%, then confusion have like started. If it is the query coverage is 50%, that means it is only taking or covering a domain. So instead of full protein modeling, that is talking about domain modeling. Alignment softwares are Clustal W, T Coffee, Clustal X2, Clustal Omega. They could be used for sequence alignment. We will show you the detailing of that. Modeling could be done by many softwares. Commercial are Axilleries, which is from Insight now, and Tripos is from Sybil. There are some freewares like Modeler, which is developed by Andre Sally Lab, Jackal, which is by Barry Honing Lab, Scroll by Ronald Dunbrack Lab, and Swiss Model by the Swiss Initiative of Bioinformatics. As I told, it is modeling, so it's a prediction. So verification of the model quality is very important, and that is done by empirical energy-based tool, which is PSQS and Swiss PDB Viewer. Geometric quality, which is ProCheck, AsepCheck, etc. The links are given here. You could go there and check and test those links. Application of homology modeling. Structural knowledge of protein gives some understanding of function. Remember, I told the purpose of getting the structure is to understand the function. So if you have the structural knowledge, it would help you to understand how the protein, how the enzyme is taking care of the function, how the substrates are coming, binding, and all these things. It helps to understand mechanism of action, like how a structural protein binds or an enzyme works. Predictive structures can be used in structure-based drug designing. You know the 3D structure, you put the ligand there, and that would be helpful if it is an inhibitor or it is a new drug design. It could help us understand the effect of mutation on structure and function. There are change in the protein's sequence, and that change significantly affect the functionality. Depending on where the mutation happened, what is the change of chemistry, how the three-dimensional structure and its interaction would be affected, we could understand the effect of the mutation. It could be used in comparative structural study between related proteins. You have related protein, you want to understand their relation, they are with same fold or not. The 3D structure is very well helpful, useful in doing that. Small molecule, there are several limitations of homology modeling. Small molecules, water and ions used to be retained from the template structure. Experimental, so when you are making the modeling, you have your sequence, you search for a related sequence. Now to make it a template, you have to eliminate the water molecules and all from the template structure. Experimental data is not incorporated in most of the cases, especially mutagenesis is very useful when modeling ligand binding sites. So when you are doing the mutagenesis, the change in the amino acids, to understand that having the substrate inhibitor would be very helpful. The presence of ligand is also likely to alter the conformation of the protein. So when the small molecule bind, in many cases that push towards changing the conformation of the protein. So it should be very advisable that you know that the binding of your protein change the conformation of the protein or not. When you walk through, you choose a template, and the template structure was solved from electron density. Unfortunately, the electron density of the selected model is not good. Then your structure, your template, like your model would not be of good quality. There are two zones of homology modeling. One is the safe homology modeling zone, which is around 40-50%, and then twilight zone, which is not a safe zone for homology modeling. So expectation of comparative modeling, easy when 40 to 100% sequence identity, strong sequence similarity, strong structure similarity, obvious functional analogy. Difficult 25 to 40 sequence identity. As I already told, it is a twilight zone sequence similarity, increasing structure divergence and functional diversification. But when below 25, it is homology modeling is not going to work, and you have to go for the next technique, which is fold prediction or fold recognition. There are several, exceptions, like sequence might be similar, that does not mean they're homologous. Like phosphoribosyl transferase and viral coat protein, they are two very different protein. Viral coat protein develop the structure of the viral surface, whereas phosphoribosyl transferase is a group transfer reaction containing enzyme. Now, if you look at their sequence identity, the identity is 42%, and we have told in the previous slide that more than 40% they could be model each other very easily, but unfortunately here you cannot model anyone depending on the other. So this is an exception. Different but homologous, the opposite case. Histone H5 and transcription factor E2F4. If you look at, both of them are DNA binding protein. Histone H5 binds to histone. Transcription factor E2F4 binds to DNA. So they both are having same function. Both are having similar structure. If you look at, their major structure is a supersecondary structural motif, which is helix, loop, helix. But unfortunately, when you compare them, when you align them, they only have 7% identity. So they have similar fold, similar function, but identity is only 7%. So when you do modeling, you are going to introduce biasness. What is biasness? Like, you grow up idolizing your grandfather. So you grow up like him. In your character, people see him. Similarly, if there is something that is called biasness, like you have the alpha helix from the template structure and you develop the model, you see the valine which is in the template structure. There is a glutamine in the model structure, but very interestingly, the conformation adopted by the valine is the same conformation glutamine is adopted, which means the conformation of valine is biased in the like initial model in the amino acid glutamine, but biasness could be, solved. The problem of biasness could be solved by energy minimization. That means you push the model protein towards lower energy, and you see when that happened, then the glutamine adopt a different conformation. So there could be biasness when you are performing modeling, but to solve the biasness, you should always follow a step after modeling, which is energy minimization. Also, when you have multiple conformation and you have structure of both the conformers, it is very difficult which one to choose. Like the backbone structure of the model will be almost identical to that of the template. Therefore, the conformational state of the template will be retained in the resultant homology model. So, which one you are taking template, the model would be like that. So here, when you look at the channel protein, membrane protein, it is in the closed and open state. And you have to know from the experimental setup or experimentalists' information when considering the open and closed conformation of a channel, when it adopt closed conformation, when it adopt open conformation, the model you are performing, is it representing the open or the closed conformation? These informations would be extremely valuable for you to choose the template. And the case is always same when you apply it from APO. APO means enzyme without any ligand, and in comparison to bound state of a ligand binding site. Loop modeling is a very difficult thing, very challenging thing. There are several issues with loop modeling. As loops are less restrained by hydrogen bonding networks, they often have increased flexibility and therefore are less oil defined. We have talked about different structural elements. There are alpha helix, there are beta strands which meet parallelly or anti-parallelly to develop beta sheets. When we consider alpha helices and beta sheets, we know that there are regular hydrogen bond between the C double bond O and NH backbone. But when you consider loop, you cannot say that. So as loops are less restrained by hydrogen bonding because they don't have the regular hydrogen bond network, so they often have increased flexibility in comparison to alpha helix or beta sheets, and therefore they are always well defined. In addition, the increased mobility make loop region more difficult to structurally resolve. So this mobility not only makes it difficult to model, but makes it also difficult for experiment. So often proteins are poorly conserved in loop region. There are usually residue insertion or deletion within the loop. Why? If you look at nature, always need changes, because according to nature, change is the most constant. To make changes, it could have incorporated residues in alpha helix, beta sheet, or in the loops, but it is also some cared point for the nature that if it would continuously or it would insert the residues or delete the residues in alpha helix or beta sheets, that might lead to instability in the whole protein. So Nature didn't want that, so they make changes more often in the loop region, inserting or deleting residues. And that makes loops even more flexible, more unmatched. Proline and glycine residue are often found in loops. So, proline, if you remember, proline is giving you a rigidity, and glycine being the smallest. So, proline, it is in the ring giving rigidity. Proline, glycine being the smallest, give flexibility. So, they are two different effect containing amino acids, whereas proline is not allow many conformations, glycine allow them. So we talked about prediction modeling or homology modeling. Now we have another two. With an existing fold, it is fold recognition, where preferred after homology modeling, it model a protein based on availability of similar fold. A new fold in protein, ab initio, very robust method, only used when both homology modeling and fold recognition fail to perform. You could also divide them in different or in other point of view: knowledge based method, ab initio method, and energy based method. The energy based method means minimization of energy so that the protein fold and go to the global minima. Coming to the prediction of protein structure by using fold recognition of threading, as I told, it was estimated that there are only around 10,000 stable folds in the nature. The fold recognition is essentially finding the best fit of a sequence to a set of candidate folds. Select the best sequence fold alignment using a fitness scoring function. A fitness scoring function is always a very difficult thing because there is no standard. You have to develop a scoring. So as I told, that people think that nature with so much multitasking, they have so much to work, they take some relief in the fact that in spite of having extreme diversity in the sequence, having a collection of billions and trillions of sequence, they only have number of folds. So nature does not every time have to imagine a novel fold, rather match it with the existing one. Fold recognition or protein threading, this method is used when homology model is not allowed. Like if you look at the cartoon, there is sequence of the structure which is unknown, and it is asking which fold would match me, and all the structures in the library says, may I help you? So process of threading, it could be said that a protein fold recognition technique involves incrementally replacing the sequence of a known protein structure with a query sequence of unknown structure. The new model structure is evaluated using a simple heuristic measure of protein fold quality. What is a simple heuristic measure? Simple heuristic measure is anything which is very common in computer. So you have a sequence, and the sequence would be chopped into different small fragments, and those small fragments would come and match in the library. So suppose one sequence come and match with a fold A, and the match is a good match, so it's score 10. But then now, with gradual trial and error, it finds another different fold which is getting a point of 12. So it will immediately go to the 12. So this journey will continue until the sequence will not get something of ultimum. And what is the ultimum, or what is the highest? There is no highest thing. anything could be better than the other. So this search actually have no end, and that is the biggest problem of this optimizing scoring function. As I told, the process is repeated against all known 3D structure until an optimal fit is found. And what is an optimal fit? No one understand, no one have any answer. Let's take an example of protein threading to give you a demonstration of how it works. So for simplicity, we take two proteins, but the two proteins have same or conserved core segment, which probably is not the usual scenario. The four part which develop that conserved core segment are I, J, K, L. So now the planning is, first you have to find out the interaction between IJKL. As you see, there are two structurally similar protein here, and in the next step we are finding the spatial adjacencies, which is the interaction between the conserved core segments. And then those conserved core segment is interacting with the rest of the protein sequence. So it is possible threading with a sequence. So input output of protein threading, the input are core segment, the core residues, amino acid sequence, the sequence collection, pairwise amino acid scoring function. There are different type of scoring function. Here they are picking up pairwise amino acid scoring function, which means, if you remember, I told if you have an alanine and the neighbor is also an alanine or the neighbor is also an arginine, there is a lot of difference. So they are calculating the relation of amino acids which is coming adjacent to another one. And with all three, you develop the program threading to get the protein structure of the protein whose structure is not understood or not known. So how to develop the scoring thing? You have to score it by having the factors. Here they have chosen hydrogen bond donor, hydrogen bond acceptor, presence of glycine as it provides flexibility, and hydrophobic residues. And you have the library of folds of known proteins. They will be scored, and you will see the score here. And based on those scores, you could develop a matrix. In one side position on sequence, in another side amino acid type. There are advantages of fold recognition or threading, but there are disadvantages. Threading methods seldom lead to the alignment quality that is needed for homology modeling. In homology modeling, it is much easier to find. In fold recognition, it is not very easy to find the alignment quality. Less than 30% of the predicted first hits a true remote homologue. So basically what I'm trying to say is, in the first attempt, there is less than 30% success rate, and that itself says that what is the problem with fold recognition. There are different threading resources. TOPITS is a heuristic threader. It is a part of larger structure prediction system, which means there are number of programs together, and TOPITS is one of them which helps in threading. 3DPSSM is an integrated system. It does its own multiple sequence alignment and secondary structure prediction, and then go for threading. GeneThreader, it is also similar to 3DPSSM. Coming to the third method, which is ab initio method. Ab initio method is conceptually very straightforward. You have sequence, you calculate using with a formula, with a factor and reach to the structure. So sequence directly going to the structure. This field is of great theoretical interest, but so far of very little practical application. Here is no use of sequence alignment and no direct use of known structures. The basic idea is to build empirical function that simulate real physical forces and potential of chemical contacts. I will talk about when we are going into the slides. So basically you have to develop a sequence, and that like that function you have to, so there would be a mathematical function, and you have to calculate or simulate the real physical force and potential of chemical contacts by that. If we will have perfect function, and we will be able to scan all the possible conformations. So one thing is having a perfect function, which is very, 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 very tough, and scan all the possible conformation, again a lot of difficulty. Then we will be able to detect the correct fold. So if we have these two, we'll get the correct fold. So ab initio protein modeling predicts structure of protein when fold recognition method is failed to perform. It requires a free energy function, a function sufficiently close to the true potential, a method for searching the conformational case. The advantage is when you do prediction, you cannot get a novel result, but with ab initio protein modeling, you could work for novel folds. So it is applicable. So the disadvantage is it is applicable to short sequence only. Generally, we used to apply ab initio up to now for modeling peptides. So ab initio modeling can be done using two protocols, like two overall development of programs. One is iTASR and another is Rosetta. iTASR is a wonderful program package. It is based on multiple threading alignment. iTASR as Jank server was ranked as the #1 server for protein structure prediction in recent CASP7, CASP8, CASP9 and CASP10 experiment. I hope you all remember what I talked about in CASP. CASP is a worldwide competition of structural and computational biologists to have a overall scoring on their performance, and based on that score they rank them also. So iTASR is a multiple threading alignment, and so it ranked #1 in 7, 8, 9 and 10 experiments. This is the description of CASP ranking. If you see carefully, the first one is Zhang server. This is by Yan Zhang, which was talking. This is also known as iTASR. Here is the schematics of iTASR. So iTASR starts with collection of sequences, then the sequence chopped and feed in the library to develop threading structure. Now you collect the template and cut it according to the loops. So now the loops are deleted and you have to introduce it. For that, you have to apply machine learning or ab initio with predicted contact restraint and decoy based optimized potential, which basically means you have the alpha helices and beta strands. Now to connect them, but you have to connect randomly and bring them in the structure assembly. Once you have the structural assembly, then you go for a very interesting statistical process which is called clustering. What is clustering? So if you have a white page in front of you, and if you have a collection of structure which is here, you first align your structure with any of the structure from the assembly, and then you keep doing others, and the development in distance would be recorded in the 2D graph as you see here. It is evident, we are confident after several studies that when you keep doing that, you get a dense region like that. That is called cluster centroid. That means most of the homologous correctly folded structures are here. Now you have that, and you restrain from cluster centroid and decoy based optimized potential. So you have all the structures, and when you have the structural reassembly, you will go for energy minimization, and in time of energy minimization, you take help from adding the rotamer by Pulchra and scroll, and finally you come to the model. So you start with sequence, you make a threading, then you create the templates, you chop the templates with alpha helices and beta sheets, and then you go through a ab initio program where new connectors are added depending on the steric hindrance inhibition. That means new loops are connected where there is no steric hindrance, and ultimately when that leads to structure assembly, you do clustering to find the similarly folded structure, and the dense cluster is cluster centroid, and you take the structure from there and do the restraint from cluster centroid. Decoy based optimized potential is also performed, and you get the structural reassembly. From there, you get the lowest E structure, and you add so up to now it is the backbone, you add the rotamer by Pulchra and Skoll and get the final model. So what I talked about is the very basic and fundamental of ITASR. Continuous increase, continuous development is going on. In addition to the classic ITASR pipeline, which I talked about, several approaches were recently developed and integrated into ITASR to enhance its ability of structure modeling for distant homology targets. As you know, nowadays the close homology targets are not a problem. They're all solved automatically. So people are looking for modeling the distant homology targets. First, the top model generated by the Quark ab initio folding were merged into the threading template pool, which were used as the starting conformation of the ITASR simulation. So what this is telling, that the top model generated by Quark, which is the ab initio folding, like ab initio model, ab initio protein calculator, they are merged into the threading template pool. Second, since the hard targets generally lack global templates, the sequences are broken into fragments of 2 to 4 consecutive secondary structure elements, which were then threaded through the PDB by segmental threading tool Sigma 9 to identify the super secondary structure motif. SVM SQ and SPCon is machine learning based program. SVM is support vector machine, are used to generate residue contact map, which was initially done by Pulchra, and Scroll. For multiple domain proteins, a software or a software version Threadom was used to predict the domain boundary and the linker region. So schematics of Rosetta. Rosetta, as I told, is another program like iTaser. So you have the target sequence. You could go for knowledge-based potential, which in phase 1, you get Monte Carlo fragment assembly. But at the same time, you go through profile alignments and you get the fragment library. Phase 1, the Monte Carlo fragment assembly will lead to low resolution model, and then in the phase 2, which you come up with physics-based atomic refinement, you get into the final structure. So this is a kind of calculation or self-assessment. You have a protein sequence, you go for database searching, you get multiple sequence alignment, and you get the homologue in PDB. If that yes, you go for homology modeling, you prepare 3D protein model, and so here, this is the overall approach of protein modeling. You see, you could approach, and by having yes or no's, you could have comment on them. It's a series of self-assessment. You have the sequence, as I told, you go for database searching, multiple sequence alignment, homology modeling. If it is yes, you go for homology modeling and you make the 3D model. If it is no, you go for secondary structure prediction. For fold recognition, you match them, go for predicted fold if the fold recognition works. If yes, you go for sequence structure alignment and make the 3D model. If it is no, you go for ab initio structure prediction and go for the prediction of 3D model. So this is the quick animation. And beside that, here we are talking about 3D structure prediction. Beside that, there are methods for secondary structure prediction. There are 3 generations of protein structure, secondary structure prediction. These are first generation, second generation, and third generation. The first generation method is single residue statistics, which is some residues which have tendency to go, like depending on its chemistry, size, and all, it would go preferably to alpha helix or beta strand or loop. So some residues have particular secondary structure preferences, and based on empirical frequencies of residues in alpha helices, beta sheets, and coils, Chow in 1974 and Fassman in 1978 predicted like glue have a tendency to go for alpha helix, valine have a glue means glutamate, val means valine have a tendency to go to beta strand. So Chow-Fassman rule is preliminary, not depending on the structure. It depends on the basic chemistry and physics of the amino acids, and the accuracy level is just 50%. This table will say the preference scale for different amino acids in secondary structures. So if you see the residue name alanine, alpha helix, it is 142, beta strand 83, and turn 66, which means it have very high preference to go for alpha helix. Some like arginine, alpha helix 98, beta strand 93, turn 95. That means it have equal chance to go to alpha helix, beta strand, and turn. Aspartic acid have 101 for alpha helix, 54 for beta strand, 146 for turn. That means aspartic acids are generally being there in the turn. but it have higher tendency to be in alpha helix than beta strand. So these are empirical calculation based on the research of Chow and Fassman. Second generation method, which are segmental statistics. It is similar to the first generation, only you have additional data coming from the protein, where you look at how the adjacent residues, segmental statistics are affecting you. And the problem is you have low accuracy below 66%, and for beta strand it is even lower, and the predicted structures are too short. You come to third generation method. They consist of two new ideas. One, a biological data, which is using evolutionary information based on residue conservation analysis of multiple sequence alignments, and technological idea, which is based on computer algorithm called neural network. So one, you are looking at that protein by nature continuously go through evolution changes, and then there you think about a neural network, and it is an attempt to imitate human brain by computer. So how human brain think, how human brain connects, by which you develop a technical approach, technical initiative. So the neural network model created, which is machine learning approach, provides training sets of structures like already having alpha helix, beta strand, and non-alpha helices. So you get one sequence giving to alpha helices, one sequence giving non-alpha helices, and computers are trained to recognize the pattern in known secondary structure. The accuracy is significantly high, 70 to 75%, but it becoming higher and higher with more data incorporated. So with that, I would finish the modeling part. If you have any questions, you could ask me. Any questions you are having? Anyone?
No, sir, I have no question.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.